Sensei fam, I am back with another One Piece theory. Who do I believe Imu is? What is his goal? How strong may he be? All that and more in today's video. Imu, the Ancient Kingdom, Joy Boy. Three very distinct things in One Piece that have so much ambiguity behind them that we are constantly talking about them and wondering who they may be and what it may be. Now, we do have some sparse information on these three topics, but not enough to make a complete theory without some speculation and headcanon. The topic on this video is Imu and who he may be. So I want to go through the information about Imu that we do have so far. Im is an individual bearing the highest sovereignty within the world government. Even the 5 elders bow down to him, and he is the current holder of the empty throne. However though, Imu is hidden and kept a secret within the government and the rest of the world. As far as his personality goes, we don't know a lot, but he does seem to have a gentle side, as we do see him or her holding butterflies in the Room of Flowers. But we do know that Im has a particular interest in Monkey D. Luffy, Marshall D. Teach, Shirahoshi, and Vivi. Im keeps wanted posters and photos of all 4 of them on his person. Luffy and Blackbeard's posters are cut apart, and Shirahoshi's picture has a dagger pinning it to the ground. Vivi's picture is the only one not shown to be damaged. As far as Im's aesthetic, he possesses a saber, but we have not seen him in combat at all. We can assume though that it's been used to cut apart the bounty posters and the photographs. Now this next part is very interesting. As the royals gathered at Mary Joy's for the reverie, Im went into a chamber deep within the Pangaea castle, and he walked up to a very large straw hat, while carrying some bounty posters including Monkey D. Luffy's. He later went to the Room of Flowers and cut apart Luffy and Blackbeard's bounty posters while examining pictures of Shirahoshi and Vivi. When the reverie started, Im met with the 5 elders while sitting on the empty throne, and the elders simply asked him that he reveal the name of the light that needed to be extinguished from history. Now that we've went through the information on Im, I want to start the theory by talking about one thing in particular, the 4 pictures that he has. We see 2 pictures that are shredded up, Luffy's and Blackbeard's. And you may be thinking, well, what do Blackbeard and Luffy have in common? The D in their name. What is this D? What does it mean, and what is the will of D? Well, if you all remember Jagger D. Saw, he's one of the few characters on One Piece that carry this D in their name, but he specified that he didn't know what the letter D meant, but he did go on to confirm that his family has always carried it. And from this information, we can assume that this letter D is passed down from generation to generation, and that's important to hold on to that. Also, if we take a look at the characters on One Piece that carry the D mark, they almost all seem to be related to each other, either by fate or by blood. So with Monkey D. Luffy and his family, for instance, you have Monkey D. Luffy, you have Dragon, which is his father, and then you have his grandfather, Monkey D. Garp. They all carry D in their names, but there have been times when people with the letter D have had children together. An example is Gold D. Roger, and he had a child with Portgas D. Rouge, Portgas D. Ace. Something else to keep in mind is a good amount of the bearers of D are giant, or at least that's what Jagger D. Saw claimed. And I think that the fact that a lot of them are giants makes a lot of sense. Keep that in mind, a lot of these Ds, according to Saw, are giants. But I think the most important conversation about the D that happened was when Don Quixote Rocinante learned that Law was a D. He revealed to Law that those with the initial in their name are from the D clan. Where Rocinante came from, children were told that if they misbehaved, they would be beaten up by D. Similarly, elders of that country seemed quite wary of the storm that the D would bring. According to Rocinante, the Ds are considered to be the natural enemy of the celestial dragons, and the celestial dragons are considered to be gods. So now we have some information about the will of D. Let's quickly summarize. It's passed down by generation to generation. We can assume a lot of them are giants, and that this D was considered to be devil, or the enemies of the gods being the world nobles. All of this is very important. We also know that a lot of these Ds are related to each other, and some of them have even had children together. Well, what does this mean? Devil and enemy of the god. Well, I believe Blackbeard and Luffy's pictures are shredded because they are these devils, or the enemies of gods, all stemming from the original devil, who I believe to be Joy Boy. Well, who is Joy Boy, you may ask? Joy Boy is an extremely relevant figure of the Void Century, and he played an important role in the history of Fishman Island. We all know that he left a certain item of unimaginable value in the last island of the Grand Line, and he was first mentioned on the Ryugu Poneglyph, read by Nico Robin while at the Sea Forest. Goldie Roger declared that he wished the two could have lived during the same period upon learning the true history of Laugh Tale. When the appointed time comes, Joy Boy is expected to appear again. The true meaning of the expectation remains unknown. Now, what about this moment at Fishman Island? Well, about 900 years ago, the residents of Fishman Island made a promise to a great man known as Joy Boy. He attempted to raise Noah with Poseidon's aid, but he broke his promise to Fishman Island. However, Fishman Island promised that they would keep Noah safe until a certain date came. Joy Boy left a letter in the form of a poneglyph to Poseidon, apologizing for breaking the end of the bargain. And then at some point, Joy Boy came across the island which would be later known as Laugh Tale by Goldie Roger, and he left behind a treasure. Fishman Island's half of the promise was almost broken during the events of Fishman Island arc when Monkey D. Luffy was asked to protect the island no matter what the cost, even if it meant that Noah had to be destroyed in the process. And before Luffy could destroy the ship completely, Noah was stopped by a group of Sea Kings that were summoned unknowingly by Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi. Keep that in mind as well. Imu had a dagger in Shirahoshi's picture, thus saving Fishman Island and maintaining the nation's promise to Joy Boy. However, the ship was still heavily damaged. The Sea Kings then took the ship to the Sea Forest where they planned to fix it. Now, why was there a dagger in Shirahoshi's picture? Well, Shirahoshi was a part of this situation with the Noah, and we know that she has inherited the power of Poseidon, an ancient weapon. So it's very relevant that Imu had a dagger in her picture. If we look at these pictures, we can kind of range how threatening he feels about these certain individuals. You can look at it that way, or you can also look at it as Im having some sort of checklist that he feels like he's taking care of Luffy and Blackbeard and Shirahoshi is next, but I think that he thinks that Luffy and Blackbeard are most threatening because they are D's, so he shredded their pictures, and he has a dagger in Shirahoshi's because yes, she is an ancient weapon, but he's not quite sure if he has to delete her from history yet. He might still be undecided or thinking about it. That's how I would like to think. I believe that Im believes that the D's are the enemies no matter what. Now in this situation, I believe that Joy Boy and Im were enemies, sworn enemies, because Joy Boy was this first D or this devil. And I'm considering Imu God in this situation, at least he considers himself to be that. But now I want to talk about the Ancient Kingdom. Where does that tie into all of this? Well, what do we know about the Ancient Kingdom? This great kingdom or ancient kingdom has said to be vast, proud, and powerful. All mentions of it in its history have been erased. That's very important. While even its name remains a secret, it was likely an enemy of the 20 kingdoms, which are now the world government, as implied by Professor Clover, and was seemingly destroyed utterly by them over 800 years ago at the end of the Void Century. In fact, it seems its defeat allowed the Ancient Alliance to seize global control and establish the world government. Furthermore, the Ancient Kingdom is the real reason the world government has banned any poneglyph deciphering and research, as the mere existence and idea of this kingdom presents a threat to the world government. Now, we all know the history with Ohara and Professor Clover, and we learned about the poneglyphs, that about 800 years ago the Kazuki family invented a special kind of indestructible cubical monolith, the poneglyphs, and a lot of people speculate that the kingdom knew of the incoming defeat and decided to put all of their history on these poneglyphs. They then put them in special locations throughout the world and entrusted them to future generations. The world government had banned any research of the poneglyphs and methodically erased the information on the Great Kingdom from all historical records and text. Now, considering all of this, what are my thoughts? Well, this is where we get to the core of the theory and we get to the juicy speculation. I believe that before the 20 kingdoms became enemies of the Ancient Kingdom, that they were one. And what do I mean by they were one? Well, I believe that they were under the same regime. And I feel like they were held by two powerful figureheads, one being Joy Boy and one being Imu. Now, Joy Boy and Imu could have different names. They could have names that we aren't aware of, but we know them as Joy Boy and Imu, so that's what we will be calling them. I believe that these two were the figureheads of this big, great kingdom. They could also be two figureheads of the 21 kingdoms. Maybe there was 21 kingdoms, 21 leaders, or maybe they were just the leaders of all 21 kingdoms. But either way, I believe that they were under the same regime. Now, I believe one of two things happened, but what probably happened is that in this ancient kingdom that Joy Boy may have discovered on his travels, or maybe he just discovered in general, or it could have just been there all along, but either way, when he was adventuring or exploring, he discovered the origin of the devil fruits. I want to try to put this in terms that a lot of people are familiar with and it might make a lot of sense to them. We all know the story of Adam and Eve, and if you don't know, I will explain it to you briefly. In the book of Genesis of the Hebrew Bible, chapters 1 through 5, there are two creation narratives with two distinct perspectives. In the first, Adam and Eve are not named. Instead, God created humankind in God's image and instructed them to multiply and to be the stewards over everything else that God had made. In the second narrative, God fashions Adam from dust and places him in the Garden of Eden. Adam is told that he can eat freely of all the trees in the garden except for a tree of knowledge of good and evil. Subsequently, Eve is created from one of Adam's ribs to be his companion. They are innocent and unembarrassed about their nakedness. However, a serpent deceives Eve into eating fruit from the forbidden tree, and she gives some of the fruit to Adam. These acts give them additional knowledge, but it gives them the ability to conjure negative and destructive concepts such as shame and evil. God later curses the serpent and the ground. God prophetically tells the woman and the man what will be the consequences of their sins of disobeying God. Then he banishes them from the Garden of Eden. Well, you may be asking, what does that have to do with now? Well, we recall the Garden of Eden, correct? Well, what if this Garden of Eden was actually a place in the ancient kingdom, and this tree of forbidden fruit was the tree that bared the devil fruit, the origin of the devil fruit? And in this situation, this will of D is the will of the devil or the serpent, the thing that tricked Eve, or in this situation, Joy Boy, into eating these fruits. And then Eve, or Joy Boy in our story, subsequently gave fruit to Adam, or Imu. And that is how Imu became tainted with the devil fruit. Well, why would this be an issue? Well, we know how pretentious the world nobles are. They believe themselves to be above all others. They believe themselves to be higher than others and on a different standard. Well, what if this devil fruit, in Imu's eyes, tainted his blood, tainted his being, made him something that he wasn't? Maybe he felt as if he was a monster or someone that couldn't be seen to the world. That would explain why they're keeping Imu such a secret from everyone. This history, this devil fruit history, the tainting of their bloodline, may be something that they don't want the world to know about. And this might have caused the divide between him and Joy Boy, leading to the separation of the 20 kingdoms and them wiping the ancient kingdom off of the map. Why do you think they try so hard to hide all of the Void Century information? They don't want the world knowing of the travesty that fell upon their leader, which is also why they hide him, as I said before. But in my opinions, there's more to this, and I feel like Doflamingo is the key to the information we're lacking. I know you're probably wondering, well, how is Imu alive if he was around during the Void Century? Well, I want to direct you to a screenshot of a panel of Doflamingo talking to Siru. Siru says it wouldn't have to come to this, and Doflamingo says, I was the one holding the reins on all the monsters in this world. You shouldn't have taken me down, mark my words. You will rue this mistake. Well, what mistake did they make? And what information does Doflamingo have? And I believe Doflamingo has the information that is the history of the devil fruits and Im himself, especially what happened to Im to make him live this long. I want to direct you to another screenshot where Doflamingo and Law were having a conversation about the Opi Opi no Mi. He says that it has the power to fulfill one of humanity's oldest dreams. Those who call it the ultimate devil fruit are not few. Yes, I am well aware, none of that interests me. However, the pinnacle technique of this fruit is the ability to grant eternal life, ageless surgery, but doing so will cause the user to forfeit his own life. Well, I feel like at some point these devil fruits were dispersed to Joy Boy's men and also other people in the 20 kingdoms, and someone got this Opi Opi no Mi and they figured out what they could do, and then Imu directed them, because he is the leader and they would blindly follow, to use the ageless surgery on him so he could have eternal life. And you may be wondering, why would Imu want eternal life? Because he wants to wipe the D's out from existence. He wants to get rid of the will of D. He wants to be alive forever until he can wipe it away from memory. He wants to get rid of it completely. His job, his ambition, is to find out who was going to be the reincarnation of Joy Boy and kill them immediately. Get rid of them so he can put an end to all of this, because he believes that these devil fruits will taint you. They are not good things. They are from the devil, and that is what the D stands for. This will of D is the will of the devil. That's what I truly believe. And in their eyes, this devil is whatever embodiment of these devil fruits is. A lot of people in the community speculate that these devil fruits could have their own souls. Well, what if there's just one true person that embodies the will of these fruits completely? That may have been the serpent in our story, the same serpent that tricked Eve or Joy Boy. Well, what is the relevance to the giant straw hat? Well, you may recall that I told you to remember what Saul said, that a lot of the people in the D clan were giants. Well, what if Joy Boy was maybe a half giant or a giant himself, and that's why the straw hat is so big? That is definitely not a straw hat that would be used by a normal sized individual. And we remember that a lot of these members were giants, and that sometimes the D clan can be related to each other. So what if Joy Boy was a giant or a giant hybrid? That can make sense to why a lot of these giants were Ds. I want to try to tie up a few loose ends. We already tied up the loose end about Imu living this long, but another one is, how would these devil fruits have gotten around? Well, remember, this was 800 years ago, and we know that when a devil fruit user dies, it gets reincarnated into the nearest fruit. Well, Joy Boy traveled, and I'm assuming his people may have as well. So what if over time these devil fruit users from the kingdoms had traveled all around the world and just have died in different places over these 800 years? At some point, these fruits would reincarnate to other fruits, but all over the world. And after that happened for about 800 years, of course, all the fruits would be all over the One Piece world. It just makes sense. Now, I know that most of this is speculation and headcanon, and I am probably wrong, and I could be completely off. But in closing, I think that the Adam Eve story and the serpent being the will of the devil makes some sense. That he is the embodiment of these fruits, and he transferred into Joy Boy, and Joy Boy became the first D. And all of these other Ds are fragments of his will. There's also something very menacing about Joy Boy. We see him depicted smiling a lot, and we see these Ds always living on. When Roger was about to die, he smiled, and a lot of people think that maybe Gold D Roger was a reincarnation of Joy Boy, and now Luffy is as well. Well, we see Joy Boy smiling, and his name is Joy Boy, and then we see Roger smiling because he knows that his will of Joy Boy will pass on to the next generation. They might call him Joy Boy because he was joyous in his death. He was smiling. I believe that Joy Boy getting these devil fruits and becoming the first D, he became direct enemies with Imu, and then they wiped him in the ancient kingdom, which may be where these devil fruits are or where Joy Boy reigned over, completely off the map. Even until present day, they destroy any evidence, even up until the O'Hara incident with the Buster Call. They want to stop this information no matter what. The knowledge that Imu, their king, is tainted is something that these gods cannot live with, and they will do anything in their power to get rid of this. Thank you so much for listening to my theory. Of course, I've given you my thoughts, but I am curious to how all of you think, so make sure you leave comments down below and let me know who you think Imu is and who Joy Boy is, and how do you think the Ancient Kingdom could be related. Also, my Twitch and Discord link is in the description. Make sure you follow me on Twitch and make sure you join the Sensei Grand Fleet server so we can have even more conversations. As always, I hope you all are staying safe and healthy during these trying times. This has been Sensei Inc., and I will see you all in the next video.